Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Gabby. I'm the marketing lead at MatTrack, and our webinar today is all about lean construction. So how to set yourself up for lean construction success. We're going to be showing you a realistic approach to implement lean construction techniques. A couple of things before we get started. The webinar will be roughly about 45 minutes with a 10-minute Q&A at the end. So feel free to submit your questions. We would love to answer them at the end. There is a question box and a chat box on your GoToWebinar panel. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll send that out tomorrow along with these slides so you guys have something tangible to take away from. I'm so excited to introduce our presenters. I'm gonna let them do their own introductions because they deserve this deserve this spotlight more than I do. So Andrew, Dom, I'm gonna kick it off to you, Andrew, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Andrew Zompo. Look, I've been around the lean circles and implementing process and business improvement methodologies for probably the last 20 years. You know, more recently, the last 6 of them, I've really focused on working with businesses as well as construction companies in the construction sector and industry. So I've had a little bit of recent exposure, and I've been doing process and business improvement for a little while. So hopefully today and what we talk about today and what we mention will provide some value to the audience.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. How about you, Dom?
Hi everyone, my name is Dominique King and I've been working in the construction and STEM industries for about 10 years. I've worked in project divisions across manufacturing, audiovisual engineering, civil construction, and I've now made the jump into construction technology. Yeah, the parts and the pieces that make up our industry are fascinating to me, and as I've grown in my career, I love picking up tips. So I'm glad to be in this conversation with Andrew, and hopefully we'll get a good, fun 45 minutes out of it.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is going to be great. Thank you both again so much for joining us. Let's get into it. Andrew, can you give the audience a quick overview on what is lean?
Yeah, sure can. Thanks, Gabby. Look, lean is a methodology. It's a framework of being able to create a culture of continuous improvement. It's certainly not the only methodology or framework that's out there, but I guess the main thing with lean and the thing that sort of sets it apart from maybe other approaches is that it's holistic, meaning anyone and everyone in an organization can play their part. So it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or if you're, you know, a person working, a laborer or someone on a production line, what have you. Everyone has got a part to play in lean, and the framework or this vehicle that I speak about, it's a structure, it's a way of doing things and a way of thinking, and it's about changing the way the business thinks to think more about improvements and, you know, how the processes work and what sort of value the process creates, and trying to minimize, you know, any of the waste that's associated with any process that's within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Dom, is there anything, I think you nailed that really well. Andrew, is there anything you'd like to add to that, Dom?
Yeah, that I thought Andrew nailed that as well. So I'll just probably add that my understanding of lean is also based on a philosophy of respecting people and empowering individuals and teams to find value in the work that they do every day.
I think that's a really great tip, and I want to this is my first webinar in a long time, so I want to apologize to keep this really organic and authentic. I was going to launch a poll just to see what the audience has, like if anyone has heard of lean in the past. So you'll see a quick poll on your screen right now. Yeah, like I can speak to this really quickly that I have heard of lean, right? Like I've been working in software for the last 10 years, and I've always heard of the lean methodology, but I've never actually put it into practice. So even hearing about it being used in construction is really fascinating to me because as a new as construction is a very new industry for me, and seeing that you can kind of adapt it to any industry is really cool. And the value that I've already been gathering just speaking to the two of you on how lean construction can be adopted and like the impact it makes on a project is really incredible. So it actually looks like half of the audience knows what it is, but don't use it and want to learn more. So it sounds like everyone's in the right spot. So that's great. So when you spoke about waste, Andrew, and about reducing waste, can you give us a quick overview of what do you mean by waste, and what is the 8 major types of waste that lean targets?
The waste that I'm speaking about, obviously, the easiest way and the easiest sort of thing that I think pops into most people's minds is, when you think about rubbish as waste, so things you throw in the bin. Sure, that's a waste. It can be, but the lean theory, I guess, which we go back to, has 8, like you mentioned before, discrete categories that I think every type of waste that I've come across can be put into those particular buckets for purely classification purposes. There's no real other reason behind it. It's also there that, when you're going through the process and you're thinking about your process and how to optimize it, sometimes you get stuck. So you need a prompter. So that's what these, main categories are trying to facilitate. And it's a really easy way to remember it. And there are a couple of different variants to this and iterations to this out there. But the one that I like, and I think it resonates really well with construction, is downtime. So each of those letters stand for something. What we've got there on the first slide, which is the DOWN part of it, meaning defects, overproduction, waiting, and not utilizing talent. So, they're pretty self-explanatory when you read them. And we can go on to the next slide if you like, and just look at the time part of it, which is transport, inventory, motion, and excessive processing. So yeah, they're the typical ones that you would have lean wastes fall into. And as I said, it's a real simple acronym that if you're ever stuck and you don't know, you're looking at a process and you want to try and uncover the wastes. If you remember the acronym, that should sort of promote and stimulate a bit of conversation if those wastes exist.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really useful. I can even looking at that see so many ways that you don't even think that that's waste, but it definitely is, right? So I think that's what's important. I want to talk about. Oh yeah.
Quick. Jump in there real quick. I just want to point out that I love the fact that Andrew differentiated between hard rubbish and what we consider as waste, because most of us who were initially introduced to lean make this assumption. So thanks, Andrew.
That's a really good point. And when I was actually starting to do the research on this webinar as well, I also thought it was just pretty much waste equals trash or waste equals rubbish, right? I'm saying that in the American way, not the Australian way, rubbish. So I think it's fascinating that, like, when you think of waste, we actually are so wasteful as humans in general, and not just as hard rubbish. We waste our time, we waste our money, we waste so many things. So the fact that these processes can be applied at least to reduce waste in our business, maybe not our personal life, we could get there, but I think it's really important. I want to jump and talk a little bit about the key benefits and like why is the time to adopt lean construction now? Like what are people going to get out of it?
Yeah, I think there's a really good opportunity. I don't think there's there's no specific moment, I guess, or nothing has really occurred to prompt it. It's always been there. As I said, I've been working in the industry for like 6 years, so I think it's a good time to start the journey. There's a lot of organisations out there in different industries that support the construction industry, that work with the construction industry, that all utilise lean thinking and lean methods. So it's just really an opportunity, I think, for construction to get involved, unpack it a bit, see how it relates to them, and see how they can get the best out of it. And just, there's probably half a dozen points mentioned on this slide, but I'd probably say there's even more than that if you really wanted to start breaking it down. So there's no doubt the opportunity to reduce waste, less mistakes, less rework, less over processing, so doing more than you need to, potentially, you know, less overproduction. There's just so many opportunities under that one. You know, and when you talk about being more efficient and you talk about being able to be more productive in what you do, it allows people to be able to then not necessarily all work on the one thing, because if you're being more productive, you're being able to, I guess, get through things much faster, be more efficient. So other people can certainly be used to win other work. So, you know, you could quite easily diversify your business very easily, or diversify what you're doing, or work on more projects very, very easily by getting more efficient with the resources. So that's the equipment and also the people that you currently have. So optimizing all that and getting more efficient is certainly a massive benefit. Productivity, as I mentioned before, you know, being able to work through your processes efficiently, in a timely manner, not having too much trash or rubbish, you know, doing all those kinds of things help significantly when you're looking definitely financially at the bottom line in terms of productivity of the workforce. Safety, without a doubt, is a massive benefit and a massive opportunity, with such a high focus in the industry on safety. And having good processes around material management, having good processes around you know, what the people are doing and productivity, so there's no congestion from a labourer standpoint, from a material standpoint, making sure whatever you need is where you need it, when you need it, in the right quantity that you need it. You know, that really ensures that your productivity can be as high as possible, but it also keeps the workplace clean and well organized, and you know, really no clutter around the place, which obviously helps for your safety and the safety of everyone on site. The ability to, I guess, understand your workflows and understand, you know, lean is a very visual method. It's supposed to be in your face. It's supposed to be full of pictures or illustrations in terms of how things work and come together. And part of that is to break down the language barrier. But it's also got to do with being able to visualize processes, and being able to visualize processes and see how the next thing is coming, or when it's actually going to come. It allows you to plan, and being able to plan gives you excellent transparency on the process and what's happening, and being able to then confidently schedule things to be able to make sure then, you know, materials, people, what have you, are in the right place at the right time, again enhancing productivity. And all of that leads, you know, all these optimizations, improvements, streamlining, whatever you'd like to call it, at the end of the day, they do give you much better transparency and ability to control cost, and be able to see cost and manage cost. So all those 6 benefits, I think, are really just scratching the surface. There's probably a stack more, but there's a quick summary on some of the benefits as I see it.
Yeah, 100%. Dom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with Andrew, and it's a great time to begin the lean journey. And I think with 54% of our attendees today actually having heard of lean but don't necessarily use it, that sort of tells me that our industry are on the way to sort of beginning that journey, because I think people are starting to recognize that every single person will benefit from adopting lean in construction in some way or another. And my thoughts around that is that it doesn't matter if you're the key decision maker on the job or the data entry person entering like a purchase order. If lean's done right and everyone is bought in with the same commitment, the entire team benefits. And lean thinking in general is breaking down the silos in traditional construction, because it brings everyone together to optimize all parts of the whole. So
Oh,
benefit.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, now that we kind of understand what it is, we understand what the benefits are, how do we actually start this lean adoption journey, right? And Andrew, you put it really succinctly in this first question to ask, but I would like you to take it from here.
I'll elaborate a little bit, and the main question is why. the first question that the organisation, I think, really needs to answer is, why are you doing this? What do you want out of it? And part of that is the whole idea of being able to be a lean business is not necessarily about one person being lean or two people being lean. It's about the organisation being lean. And you know, you to be able to do that, you need to have alignment, and everyone needs to be singing off the same hymn sheet, pulling in the same direction, whatever all those great sort of analogies. But it's so true. I mean, it needs to be from the top, it needs to be endorsed from the top, and it needs to be understood at every level why we are going to embark on this journey, because it's a journey, right? It's not it's not an item. It's not something like on a checklist, a one-line thing that you do. It's the whole notion of continuous improvement is to be continuous, and lean is a type of continuous improvement. So you've got to answer the question, why? Why do we want to do it? What goals are we setting ourselves? What target do we want to achieve? Where do we want to be 1 year, 3 year, 5 years from now on this journey? Because they're also they're great ways to be able to set yourself some benchmarks in terms of what you want to do and how you want to be and what your organisation wants to look like. So, yep, the first question is why? Why do it? And make sure that the organisation is aligned to the why.
Yeah, and I'd probably go.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dom. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'd probably even go like a step. Say you probably have 4 or 5 whys before you even get to the how, the what, and the the when. Because once you start with the why, then, like, for example, if I had an example of a project that I worked on, and one of the plasterers couldn't do the scaffolding that he needed to do, so we asked why, and it's because the room was full of the plumber's materials. Okay, so why did the plumber use that room? And you go down to the whys to get to the root problem, and then so lean thinking is definitely, why are we doing this in the first place? And there's always a domino effect.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I actually want to ask, I think it's in any organizations, but specifically to construction, asking the why is important. What if the why is hard to uncover, or what if the pain point, or the pain of the process doesn't feel like a pain yet? How do you navigate that with a company?
Was it directed to me or to Dom?
Oh, sorry. It could be. We can start with you, Andrew.
Sure. Look, I think it might not be a pain point right now, but I mean, there must be a reason why you're reaching out to, and what about lean, or the notion of being lean tickles your fancy, dare I say it. There must be some reason that's prompted. There must be a spark, and it might not be an issue. It might be an opportunity, meaning that we want to grow, we want to get into a different field, we want to service more clients, we want to increase the cycle, and we want to reduce the program. There's lots of different reasons potentially that could pop into your head in terms of why you think lean is a tool that can help you. So I think it's just about flushing that out and uncovering it. And then when you actually get to that point that you figure out what it is, the next sort of element of that is really trying to articulate what it means to you. So if you have an issue and you're wanting to improve the situation, sometimes that might be difficult to wrap around your head, but what you do know is that if this situation was gone, life would be so much better. Well, what does that kind of mean? What does that look like? How much of an improvement could we have, or how much productivity could we increase, or how much waste could we reduce if this situation was no longer? So sometimes it's not only about the problem, it's trying to flip it on the head, saying, well, if the problem was gone, what would that be worth to me, rather than what's the problem actually costing me now? So there's lots of different ways to try and find those triggers and to find those ways to unearth the why.
Definitely.
Yeah, and for me, my understanding of that is sort of lean thinking is about optimizing all parts of the whole, right? So if you're trying to find out the why, you tend to look at the whole and then break down the parts and do it in reverse. So if I was to go to a tradie and say, why is this happening, or why are you doing this way, or, you know, why can't you do your work today? And that tradie goes, because the work area is full of somebody else's materials. And you go down the chain and you find that person, okay, why are your materials in this room? And before you know it, quite quickly you've got a story and a reason, and it's either going to be an opportunity or an issue that you've got to address. But regardless, whatever issue that you're trying to address as a group, you can always find opportunity to reduce waste. So it's not a negative thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit, now that we know that we have to ask why. I love talking about this. I think this is, for me, the most valuable bit, and probably the hardest bit to do. But Andrew, can you kind of talk about what it means to have a cultural shift in terms of lean?
I think it's a little bit like I was alluding to, you know, a couple of moments ago. It's an organizational initiative, lean. It's not, you know, there are some methods out there and there are some ways of being able to create improvement. And Dom was mentioning asking why. 5 whys is a real good, you know, technique in terms of problem solving. You know, there's Six Sigma, there's other ways of being able to do things, which are all continuous improvement methods. But with some of those methods, you actually need to have I call a sphere of influence, meaning that you need to be able to pull some levers. You need some, you need to be of a particular level in the organization to make things happen. I'll put it that way. With lean, you don't necessarily need to be of a particular level in the organization. You can actually make a difference yourself, because some of the tools are so simple and so, I have to say, basic, but they provide such a great bit of leverage. And because everyone can do it, and you don't need to be at any specific level of the organization, and you can, as I said at the start, you can be the CEO or anyone right down the chain of command, right down to whatever your lowest level is. You know, everyone can be a part of it, and that creates a culture of continuous improvement. If everyone's starting to think about their processes and how they can optimize their processes, how they can maximize the value they're creating, how they can minimize waste in terms of the 8 wastes we were talking about before, all that kind of thinking, it provides a totally different organizational culture, and the attitude within the business towards business totally changes. And that's really a huge opportunity to change, you know, the person's business or the organization, because the actual energy of the business and the way it feels to be in that business will be totally different when everyone's looking to take accountability, responsibility, ownership, and make it, you know, their own, because they're putting in that effort to be able to make a change and make things better for themselves and their colleagues.
That's spot on. I know, Dom, you also have a couple of thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I just want to point out sphere of influence, Andrew. When you just said that, I wrote that down straight away because I haven't heard that term and I like it. But that was a good way of explaining how to engage a group of stakeholders. And you're right, there's no sort of, it's got to come sort of from the top down. But just because you're, you know, the director of an installation company sitting around a table with someone who's just the project assistant, brand new to site, everyone has the same stance and the same voice. I get, well, not same voice, but you know what I mean? Everyone has a right to speak up and be heard. So it's a level playing field, because that's the best way to collaborate. So the culture shift, I agree with all of what Andrew said. And it's, yeah, about listening and learning and respecting each other's contribution.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's speed through this. We're almost halfway through. So, Andrew, I want you to kind of walk us through the steps. This is our, what we put together is maybe not, I wouldn't say easy, but a more digestible step-by-step process into introducing lean into your, you know, adopting lean. So let's start with what step 1 means.
Yeah, sure. Yes, we've put together just a couple of slides here. I think there's 5 slides that we've put together in this deck. I guess of prompters. I mean, this is not the be all, the end all. This is not the secret sauce type recipe. This is you know, it's a very high level, I guess, set of steps in terms of where we think, you know, how you would go about introducing lean. So step 1, assuming your organization has no exposure to lean, but everyone wants to do it because you've addressed your why and you all think it's a good idea. The first step I would recommend is trying to find the biggest problem within the business. So what's the biggest pain point? What's the thing that's keeping you up at night? What's the thing that stresses you out the most? What's the thing that doesn't work? And you know, it could be the thing that's costing you the most money. It could be the thing that's costing you the most time. So really, if you find something that's significant and it's a significant pain point, it's normally a really good place to start. And if someone's asking, well, why would you do that? Well, pretty simply is that if you can apply some of these lean tools to this pain point and improve it, I'm not necessarily saying fix it altogether and eliminate it, but at least make it better, easier, quicker, faster, more efficient, and where it doesn't become a pain point any longer, all of a sudden you're creating a natural momentum of positivity around this whole idea of lean. So this is the kickstart. This is the thing that you want. You know, people talk about low-hanging fruit. You know, this is where you find that opportunity where you can really make a difference, and everyone can experience a positive or have a positive experience with regards to this process, and therefore, you know, all of a sudden people start getting more and more engaged, more and more into it, and your culture starts to shift as well. So it's not only about talking about it now it's also about doing it. So my first suggestion: find your biggest pain point. So step 2, did you want me to keep going?
Yeah, sorry, Andrew, I'll jump in at the end once you've gone through your steps.
Sure, no worries, Dom. Step 2. So once you found your problem, you really need to do a little bit of work around understanding not so much the process that's creating the problem, but more it's either side of the process. So there's a little acronym that I use commonly when I'm explaining this, and it's called SIPOC, which is, you know, the process is in the middle, and you know, before that you've got inputs and they come from a supplier, and after your process, whatever it is, you've got an output and you've got then the customer. And one of the things you really want to do is you know your problem and you know what you're trying to do, you know what you're trying to achieve, so you know the outcome that you're trying to create. You really need to understand from the customer's point of view, so whoever is the receiver of whatever you're doing, and it could be an internal customer, it doesn't necessarily need to be an external customer or a client, but really understand what they want and what's important to them, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want to do. So, and that's what you need to focus on achieving, and because that's the only way they're going to stay a customer or a client of yours. So once you understand that and you really know what they want and how they want it, etc., then come to the front end part of the process, which is, well, let me understand all the things that are my inputs. And this is where I find, like, I've been doing this a little while, and input into manufacturing and pharmaceutical and aviation and all these other kinds of industries that I've had a little bit of experience in, the inputs in construction are very, very different. And that's because of the relationships and the interactions between all the stakeholders. So I think there's a real niche there with regards to how construction behaves on that front end and the industry behaves, and it is sometimes quite tricky to wrap your head around. But once you do, and once you understand it, then, you know, understanding those inputs, understanding who's supplying you the information, or who's supplying you the product, or who's supplying you whatever is incoming, becomes easier and more digestible, and you can figure out what you need to do when it comes to actually optimizing your process. So understanding the customer's needs and what they want and where the inputs are is the next critical step, I believe. Step 3.
That's great. I'm just gonna keep moving through these slides for you.
Sure. So step 3, this is really taking that middle process step box. And now that you know what you're trying to achieve, and now that you know what sort of parameters or characteristics you've got to, your boundaries that you're working within, you need to unpack the process. And the best way to be able to unpack the process is to understand what's currently happening right now and what's giving you the outcome you're currently experiencing. And we call that in Lean a value stream map. It's a technical term. And it's well known in Lean methodology, and it's really just an advanced process map, or a recipe to how you do this particular process. First I do this, then I do that, then I do something else. And there are other Lean I guess aspects of this to make it what it is, but I'm not going to go into the detail about that here and now. But ultimately what you want to do is you want to break down this process into steps and understand the value that's being created in each of those steps, and conversely the waste that is potentially embedded in each one of those steps as well. So here's where you link in that downtime idea, that if you look at a particular step and you're sitting there staring at it going, I don't think there's any waste in this. Well, go back to your downtime acronym and then really flush it out to make sure there is no waste, or which waste actually exists, and then you can attach those to the particular elements of the process, and then you can look at optimizing the process in future steps. Step 4. So step 4, this is where we're talking about looking at all those wastes and being able to understand where they come from, understand if you can totally eliminate them, which is fantastic, or you can just minimize them and control them, because that's also another option. So you look at each of those steps and how do I need to re-engineer this process to be able to achieve the maximum efficiency, to be able to achieve the most streamlined process, the best process it can possibly be. And it can be it can be quite aggressive. I mean, in terms of coming up with this, what we call a future state, because the original state that was the current state, and the future state is what you're aiming for. So it can be quite an aggressive target you can set yourself, and you don't necessarily need to make the leap from one moment to the next. You can iteratively work to get there, but at the end of the day, you still need to make a target, create a goal that you want to get to. And step 4 is about eliminating those wastes and being able to optimize the process and set yourself the benchmark that you want to achieve. And then step 5. So this is about implementing it and making sure that what you have actually identified quite early on as step 1 in terms of what the problem is, you're actually fixing. So you need to make sure that your outcome is addressing it. You need to make sure that your outcome is addressing your customer needs. You need to make sure that you're still operating within the parameters that you were given, and you need to make sure that everyone is involved in terms of the implementation. So you're relying on a group of people involved in understanding the process, and those people that actually do the process, you need to get next to them. You need to understand what they actually do, and therefore when it comes to implementing the new processes, you're leaning on them to help you to implement that, because ideally if you can make them own the process and be fully accountable for the new process, and maybe even facilitate some of their great ideas into this process and let them really have it for themselves, that's the best way, to be able to have people behaving in such a way. And again, that reinforces this cultural shift. These people now don't necessarily work in the business, they work on the business, so they have some ownership and accountability, and yeah, that gets them closer and really drives a culture of teamwork and having that vested interest in the outcome.
Wow, Andrew, that was so good. And that's exactly, I think these are some, as you said at the top of the steps, like it isn't the end all be all, but it's definitely a framework that you can start implementing, right? And start thinking about just the step-by-step process. And hopefully once you get more comfortable and once you're, you've been doing it for a little bit, you can expand and continue to bring in other elements and stuff. I definitely want Dom to chime in as someone who has seen these steps pretty much implemented and seen them in action. Dom, do you want to kind of talk about what you know what you see and how it actually can work in real life?
Yeah, and as we've been preparing for this webinar, the way Andrew set out these 5 steps was really interesting for me because I haven't seen it like set out this way. But it's been good for me to get my head around, because I would have looked at it as step, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, I would have looked at it as step 1 with finding the pain points is your why. Your step 2 with identifying the customer is your who. Step 3 is our recipe, which is your what. Step 4 is working to eliminate the waste, which is your how. And your step 5 is sort of the when, if we're going to get really fundamental with it. But what that looks like in context on construction sites is what I've seen work when you're sitting at step 1. And I know that half the people here today are ready to probably look at ways in which they can sit their project teams down to say, right, we're going to introduce lean to you. I've seen this work really well, is that when you pull everyone into a room and you give them a set of post-it notes and you have them write out their activities in a way that is either adding value or it's a non-value add activity. And by putting them all up on a board, and we call it a continuous improvement board, using the downtime waste categories, you can look at an entire story across an entire supply chain of trades, really, and identify step 1, which is the why. What are we addressing? Why are we, like, what pain points are we going to start addressing, is what I'm trying to say. And that leads into your step 2. So I think, Andrew, you explained that really well, and it's something that I've enjoyed about learning this from you with this particular discussion. And with step 3, I just wanted to point out, because as Andrew explained, the time taken to complete a task, so when we're looking to define the value stream, looking at the time taken to complete a task is very important, because when we're understanding how to map out the process into steps, people understand, you know, wasting time by standing around and waiting for materials or waiting for the upstream trade to complete their works. However, when we're thinking about distance and defining the value stream, for example, if the plumber's working on the opposite end of the work site and it takes them 10 minutes to walk to where the site office or the gang box is, they can work out the distance, but most people don't take into account the 3 times that they've needed to visit their gang box during the day, for example, because they've forgotten a tool that they need. And that could end up spending an extra 30 minutes a day without even realizing that this is adding waste. So defining the value stream, which is step 3, I think was pretty valuable in this process. And just, yeah, I enjoyed the way you explained it, Andrew. It helped me work out context better.
I did too. I think that was really helpful.
One
thing I do, oh, go ahead.
Can I just, no, the only little thing I was going to add to that is that, like we were speaking about a little bit earlier, if you just, the risk of jumping straight into, you know, problems, as in like, this is an issue and why is it occurring, and just doing that multiple times is really all you're doing, I believe, is just problem solving. Where lean is more than just skin deep. It's more than just being able to fix problems. It's about, as we said, there needs to be a purpose. There needs to be an alignment. There needs to be that way of thinking for everyone. So sure, everyone can jump in and problem solve, and there's plenty of different problem solving methodologies out there that you can follow. But lean is more of a holistic approach. It's more of a company approach, and I like what you were saying before, Dom. When you talk about value stream maps and when you talk about figuring out the issue, it's not just problem solving. It's trying to reduce or eliminate the silos that exist in any business. And I think construction, you know, it was no different in manufacturing years and years ago, but construction's at this particular point where it's quite a lot of silos exist, people operating in their little space and doing a damn good job in their little space, but that it also impacts people either side of them, different trades, etc. So being able to remove those silos and look across how everything is working, I think that also helps to adjust, reset, improve the culture, whatever it might be, where it's not just about me, it's about all of us. And I think, yeah, I think that cultural aspect is a real important part, rather than just being problem solving. And you know, what we're talking about right now, and some of the things that I mentioned, this is just a start to lean. So, you know, if people think, you know, wow, this is lean, this is all it is, there's establishing a value stream map and flushing out your problems is just, you know, the tip of the iceberg. There is a whole host of ways to optimize the process with specific lean tools, and that comes into the solution. And you know, part of that is, you know, material management, people management, process standardization of processes, work layout, etc. So there's a million different tools that lean has created that certainly help in optimizing the process, and when it comes to deploying it.
Yeah, it
So,
encourages your mindset though, doesn't it? From, you know, throwing it over the fence, it's not my silo, to actually breaking down the silos and having everyone come together to go, let's attack this as a group for the betterment of the entire project. So
absolutely, definitely.
Well, and that also touches a lot about building that transparency, right? And building that visibility in like, as we said, as a key benefit, because that just also uncovers all the other things that you may not have been seeing, right? Because if you are siloed, you know, you don't know what's impacting the other team, or what's impacting someone at a different place in the supply chain. And being able to get aligned and bringing visibility to that supply chain, and how you're just, everyone's working, is going to have a better, you're going to have a better build, and regardless, right? So
Absolutely.
I do want to touch on one thing that we did, that we have mentioned, right, is those key benefits. But one thing that you and I spoke about, Andrew, earlier in the week, was the ROI that people can actually see from, like, as a measurable, you know, as a measurable KPI, right? Like, someone saying like, oh, well, this is all philosophy and this is all methodology. That sounds great, but, you know, give me the hard numbers. Like, you gave me this number as an average, and that blew my head apart. So can you just talk about, like, how projects and different, you know, just in general, right? Like, we can talk about it as a construction project, but what the ROI actually is and how they'll be able to see it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the number that I sort of gave you there, you know, with a 200% return on investment, I actually think, well, so the number came from, you know, as I said, I've been doing this a little while, and this is probably a fair number that I would pretty comfortably put my hand on my heart to quote. Doesn't matter the industry, because it's typically the type of improvement, and maybe you know, there might be some people on here that understand lean and have practiced it previously and think, gee, you're lowballing that. Yeah, well, maybe I am, because I prefer to understate and over deliver. But I think there's, you know, 200% is a fair average in terms of, you know, you give me $1, I'll give you $2 back. And lean is, again, it's not, you know, you need to put energy and effort into it, and this is why it needs to be a cultural shift. It needs to be something that's been committed to by the business. It's an investment, and you need to put energy into improving the business. And it's no different than, you know, someone, or you personally, you know, you put the effort to go to the gym, you know, to improve your health and well-being, and maybe endurance, or whatever else you want to improve about yourself by going to the gym. But by going to the gym means that you've got less time to spend in, you know, in front of the TV, or going out with friends or whatever. So there's an investment to be made to achieve a return. And this is no different. You know, there's an investment to be made in terms of, you know, looking at critically at your business processes. So you need to spend that energy and time and effort to stop working in the business and stand next to it and work on the business. And then you expect an outcome, because after all this energy and effort that probably costs time and money away from you, you know, running your business, you you want to certainly get traction and you want to get a positive outcome. So you need to be able to have a positive return at the end of the day. The 200% is typically what I've seen. Looking at construction, I would probably even hazard to say that, the number could be at least 400%. And that is
Wow.
typically why, it's typically because of, I guess many of the processes, they haven't really been critically reviewed using that value stream mentality, where you don't actually just look at things in isolation in silos. You look across how those individual processes that are siloed impact the whole. And there's massive opportunities to be gained there, especially if your project has high levels of repetition, or there's high levels of human interaction, which most are. We're really bad creatures of doing things the same over and over and over. We tend to vary just a little bit because we get tired. We do things slightly differently. We get lazy, we get sloppy, whatever it might be. But the fact is, we're not robots, which is great. And the fact is that just leads to variation, and those variations can lead to different outcomes. So because that human aspect, because the processes haven't really been unpacked and critically sort of broken down and optimized to optimize the overall outcome, I think there's a huge opportunity in construction, and there's a huge opportunity for lean construction to help the construction industry to get better. And another sort of saying I like to say is, to work smarter, not harder.
I love that. I think that's really important. And I love the fact that you touched on, yeah, we are all humans, we're not robots. So it's and that will prevent that burnout, right? Is working smarter, not harder, which is really important. I do want us to move along because we all are running out of time, but I wanted to just run through this really quickly, or Andrew, if you wanted to touch on this really quickly. What are the kind of do's and don'ts that you can at least start with, right, on if you're going to start adopting lean?
Look, I'm sure everyone can see the slides, so I'm just going to very quickly brief over them, and maybe I'm going to pick out the ones that I really look at. And the first one is, focus on the process, not the people. I think that's a really important one. When you're unpacking a process, it is about the process, not about the people. You don't necessarily design or have a particular type of person in mind when you design a process. You design the process to be able to give you a robust outcome with consideration to, the human form. But the fact is, go hard on the process, not the people. Listen to your workforce. I know it's a real important one, because these people are actually doing the process every day. So if you're wanting to understand why you're getting the outcome that you're getting, you talk to the people that are doing it, and try and be non-confrontational, be open, because some of the things you hear, you might not like. So you need to, provide that safe environment for people to be able to divulge information freely. I'll flip over to the other side since we're moving ahead. Don't assume. Definitely important to, when you've come up with a process, definitely important to walk it, understand it, make sure, confirm that's exactly what we all believe the process to be, because there's a little sort of adage out there, there's three processes: the one that we think it is, the one that it should be, and the one that it actually is. So you want to make sure that when you're dealing with your process and your current state, it's the one that it is, not the one that everyone thinks it should be, or or the one that was designed 10 years ago. So that's a really important one. And yeah, I think implementing a solution, you need to make sure that you're implementing the right solution to a problem you really have. There's no point implementing something that is fixing someone else's solution that you see, oh yeah, we could let's do that because such and such down the road's doing it, so we'll do the same, even though it might not be a pressure point of yours. So it's really, and I see this quite regularly when it comes to especially some tech solutions at the moment in construction. I see that happening, that people are just dare I say, keeping up with the Joneses. So they will implement something that someone else has got, and they'll warp their mind and their business around trying to get it to work when it wasn't necessarily a problem or such a big problem that they needed to put that much effort into. My my thoughts would be definitely look at your problems, fix, the problems that you need to fix. And if tech is a really good solution to making sure that problem isn't going to be in your business, well, then certainly look down the tech path. Otherwise, there's lots of other ways to resolve problems.
I think that's a great segue actually on our this next bit of the presentation, which is about how technology can reduce waste, right? And again, just reiterating the point that you just made, Andrew, you can't. Not every tech is going to work for, or not every solution, tech solution or software is going to solve your problem. You really have to uncover and understand what your problem is and set up a process that makes sense. And I know that Dom, you've seen this, like there are companies out there or businesses out there that are definitely improving their process, but then they're still doing it in pen and paper, or still using Excel, or it still takes them, 3 phone calls and 2 emails. And so there are then ways to be able to streamline that process even more with technology, right? And so here's just a couple of ways that we know that tech can reduce can reduce waste on the job site. Decreasing time, effort, and that waste of materials. You're able to you have the ability to plan ahead and be a little bit more proactive. Actually, looking back and seeing how you are performing and being able to benchmark and how that you can move forward based on how you performed in the previous month or the month after that. And that's a really great way to be able to continue to tinker your process. Because the tech solution is giving you some visibility. We spoke about this really early in the presentation, but supply chain visibility, right, or supply chain transparency is a massive one. That technology specifically like material tracking software that we have at Matrack, that's really what it brings to you, right? So you're being able to adopt your lean methodology and your lean process and get that extra layer of supply chain visibility with a solution like ours, for example, and streamline processes and aligning your team. I think these are all, again, it comes back to, these are all the things that lean will bring to you. The solution or the technology solution is just a way to accelerate it and to help make it stronger, not essentially replace the process in general. Given that, Dom, I want to hand it over to you so you can give us a kind of quick spotlight. You've actually seen this happening, right? A company using software like ours actually, or ours, not to sugarcoat anything, and how they're using it right now, right? So to help move those processes along.
Yeah, and I'll keep this brief because I know we're nearly out of time, but look, material is a critical element for all construction jobs, and we know this. And the traditional way in which we track materials in construction is that we would start with the field engineer who would work out what the bill of materials were. They would generate the BOM, send it to the purchase person who would create a purchase order, and then that would go through to the manufacturer. So I've seen this on, well, I mean, I think anyone in construction understands this like rudimentally, and that's that the materials would arrive in the warehouse where it would get shuffled around until they'd been checked into an inventory system. So one of the challenges I just wanted to highlight is that working out whether the materials are on site, whether they're in transit, or whether they've arrived, whether they've arrived at the yard, this is time that I know I've spent probably 30% of my week when I've worked in project management in construction. I easily spent 30% of my week ordering material, booking it in, following shipments, chasing deliveries, working with logistic companies for lost in transit stock. This is before the materials had even landed on site for installation. So obviously now material tracking, using a software, just technology in general and adopting it in construction, it's the way forward. And I'm 4 months out of having worked on site in construction, moved to the dark side. Now I'm in tech, but that bridging that gap is something I'm very passionate about because I am a traditional thinker generally. I think of technology in construction and I think of emails, spreadsheets, and Aconex. And I think the majority of construction people had thought of technology in that way. And I'm hoping that this is beginning to change because technology just makes life easier for everyone.
Yeah, it really does. I'm going to run through these a little bit, but this is just, again, I really love that we're sticking to this acronym because it is so helpful, and how to reduce downtime using material tracking software. Defects, overproduction, waiting, not utilized talent, as Andrew said at the beginning of the presentation. Let's not go through all of them, but Dom, can you give us a really high level on what, how you've seen material tracking software reduce, let's say, defects and the overproduction as an example?
So yeah, look, I've seen it before on site as well. So when a trade has installed, say, window panels, for example, and the glass has arrived broken, or they've installed it and they've walked away, and if another trade's come in after them and accidentally hit it, it's considered a defect. And just knowing when materials are arriving on site and tracking defects in that way, that has a visibility and it has an audit trail, and the transparency is there across the entire supply chain, that's a very good way of reducing waste in this instance. And sorry, Gabby, what was the other one you wanted me to mention?
Oh, talk really lightly about the overproduction, right? Like I think you gave us a really good example, or gave me and Hannah a really good example yesterday on, for example, when because you get that visibility of the material up front with our system, that overproduction or that waste of overproducing is a great example of how it's you can manage that.
Yeah, it's a common problem I think that everybody faces, because overproduction is obviously goods not needed, right? So too many materials that go to site without the consideration for the flow of work or other workers on site creates waste, because the minute that you start to make too much of something, it now needs to be put into an inventory, it needs to be stored in a warehouse, it needs transporting, and it starts a waste cycle because you're constantly moving something around, because there are people in the yard that are working extra hours moving material that isn't needed. And it's just, I think I read a statistic that material gets moved approximately 7 times more than it's necessary, which equals to about $1 per minute. So when you're tracking materials on a project, like yeah, it's just moving a material around because you don't know where to put it and you can't track it. It's huge. It's just, yeah.
Wow,
yeah, that is huge.
I think really good. Can I just add as well, the overproduction, if you have too many or too much material on site, like Dom, you were suggesting, and having to move it around, that can also create congestion where you might have some issues with safety as well. So not having free and easy access to floors and having to maneuver your way around particular items that really don't need to be in that location could pose safety issues as well.
Yeah, because we've been talking about time and budget and on projects creating value, but the reality is the quality and safety on any construction project is the priority. Yeah.
Definitely. I'm glad you actually mentioned that. That's a big one. I love that we can talk about this all day. It seems like it's really great to be able to have these conversations, and I hope that we'll be able to bring you both back to do another maybe part of this series and talk a little bit more in depth about something specific. But I do want to just kind of summarize what we've talked about. Lean is a journey, not a checklist item. We can constantly improve and focus on your process. Don't blindly implement a solution. First, really identify what your problem is. And construction is a built environment, and it's very reliant on each other. So adopting lean is an opportunity to connect everyone, to hold everyone accountable, but to bring that visibility. Now that we're at the end, I do want to plug MatTrack just a little bit. We are doing a survey, and I want you to be able to win a Bunnings gift card. You will be getting this link at the end of the presentation. Sorry, in your email tomorrow with this recording. But we're here for a Q&A. So I have a couple of questions here from the audience that I'd love for you, either of you to answer, both or one or the other. I'll probably have 3 or 4 questions. I'll probably try to ask 2 so we don't stay too over the time. But Andrew, are there any common roadblocks or obstacles I should keep in mind when adopting the lean construction model for my business?
Roadblocks. There are many, let's put it that way. The most common one is trying to find the time. Everyone is so busy in terms of their jobs, in terms of what they need to do, and their workloads. It comes back. I've got to say, to that personal sort of example I gave with, you know, if you want to go to the gym and you want to improve your physique or endurance or whatever it might be, you need to invest the time and you need to invest the energy. So, you know, initially with lean, you really need to make sure you carve out the time to be able to work on your business and not in your business. And that might be really difficult. It might even almost feel counterintuitive. But when you start getting runs on the board and you start getting the benefits, then it'll flow and it'll give you that, obviously, that positivity with regards to a return on investment and all those kinds of things. So I think you need to really understand what you're getting yourself into and be comfortable with that. Hence the reason the why is really important, because that, you know, you always look back at that and say, well, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to achieve that? And being able to get that locked in, I think that's the most important thing. So making sure you have the time, making sure you establish the commitment, I'd say, are two things that can be sometimes troublesome, but, you know, they're the things that really need to be locked away and squared away at the start.
Yeah, I love that. Dom, what about you? What do you think is the biggest obstacle?
I think just understanding that the approach of lean is simple, right? And it's attractive to an industry where budgets, timeframes, and safety are all critical. But the way that we deliver it is different because of the traditional construction methods that we're all used to. So I think just making like a proper execution of lean philosophy and techniques, understanding that there might be challenges initially with getting people around to thinking that kind of mindset, because there's no right or wrong. Well, there's no one direct way to do it, should I say. So just the mindset roadblock, that's probably my point on that.
I think that's great. I think then the last question, we'll wrap up after this one, is who, and Andrew, we can start with you again, who do you think benefits the most from adopting lean construction?
Am I allowed to say everyone?
I was good.
Yeah, you are. That's what I
because when you say who, you're back in a silo mentality, and it's not about working in silos. It's about working as a team. It's about bringing that transparency, cohesiveness, you know, all together, being able to look over the whole area. So it is definitely not a who. It's the team, the business, the organization, anyone that's a part of that journey, I think will definitely feel some positivity from the experience. And it's really important that does occur, because that is basically what sets you culturally on your journey. And, you know, it's that snowball building momentum to change a culture, to get people moving. And yeah, I'm sorry, I can't say any one person. For me, it needs to be everyone.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. How about you, Dom? What do you think?
Yeah, same. And just I think in general, our industry, we don't realize just how bad productivity is in general in construction. And it's not because, you know, the teams aren't skilled or smart or capable. It's just that we're going to work every day and we're not really thinking about the systems and the processes in place. So that's why I'm passionate about adopting lean in construction. And there's so many undiscovered ways to build better, faster, and just more enjoyable projects that our industry hasn't even considered yet. So it's an exciting time for construction.
I wholeheartedly agree, and it's been really great just seeing how even Matrock is being able to put an impact on businesses here in Australia, and seeing companies that are starting to adopt this, and then slowly moving to tech. And even for myself, like I see this whole, you know, lean methodology in general as just something that we can all in all industries adopt. Like I can't wait for all companies to get on this train. I think it's so valuable. I do want to leave it at that. We are a little bit over. I again thank you both for spending the hour with me talking about this. I think this was super insightful, and man, you both know so much, and I cannot wait to pick your brains again and to maybe do a deeper dive into some of these things that we spoke about. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you both for joining. Thanks everyone for coming. I'll let you say, we'll all say our goodbyes and talk soon.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby. Thanks for hosting that, and thanks for everyone just being able to carve out a bit of their busy time to listen to what we have to say. Really appreciate it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.